Imagine this. You awaken in a room without walls, yet you feel confined. The air is cold and still, as if time itself has paused to watch you struggle. The floor beneath you is solid, familiar, but everywhere you look, an invisible barrier hums with a silent insistence. You cannot move. You twist your head, and your own thoughts recoil at you like imprisoned shadows. Somewhere deep inside, you sense a cage snapping shut around your mind, constructed brick by brick from beliefs you once accepted without question. You stand, heart pounding, and notice there is no door, no window, and no key on the dusty shelf beside you, only a mirror. In its reflection, your eyes burn wide with fear, or is it recognition? This is your face, but the face of someone who has built a fortress of self-doubt, anxieties, and stories they whisper to themselves in the dark. You recognize the architecture, the mortar of old regrets and future anxieties cemented together by each thought you believed. I am not enough. I can't escape. This is who I am. Across every millimeter of your mental landscape, you have erected bars made of conviction. How did you come to inhabit this cell, carved with invisible tools you didn't know you wielded? Why does the comfort of familiarity feel like the cold bite of isolation? You search for an explanation, but all you find are echoes. A teacher's offhand criticism that blossomed into an internal mantra, a culture's unyielding expectations that shaped your desires, a philosopher's dictum half swallowed as gospel. And now the burden of those quotations and ideals presses upon your chest. You're breathing shallowly, caught in a paradox. You yearn for freedom, yet you clutch tightly to the very thoughts that hold you prisoner. Isn't it strange that the most impenetrable prisons can be erected without a single brick? How often have you asked yourself, why can't I move forward, while never realizing that your own convictions had already formed the walls? Your mind is capable of soaring to unimaginable heights, yet here you are, gazing at the horizon through bars made of your own making. You taste the bitter irony that freedom, in its purest sense, demands that you first dismantle the scaffolding you so proudly erect. What if every doubt is a lock, every fear a hinge fastening you to complacency? What if every time you said, I'm safe staying here, you hammered another nail? Consider the weight of a single thought, a tiny fragment of belief that takes root and grows into an entire edifice, shielding you from possibility even as it suffocates your spirit. Can you feel it? The cold rumble of anxiety echoing off those invisible walls, the hum of regret buzzing in your ears, the urgent itch beneath your skin, whispering that something is horribly, achingly wrong. And yet, the paradox deepens. Perhaps the same mind that built this prison also holds the blueprint to escape. If every barrier arises from thought, could every barrier be undone by thought as well? What would it take to see the walls for what they are, mere hallucinations of certainty, given substance only by your compliance? What would it feel like to touch the emptiness behind those walls, to step through a threshold of your own creation? You linger by the mirror, your reflection wavering. A question solidifies at the center of your being, sharp as a blade. How do you break free from a cage you cannot see? The answer, if it exists, must lie hidden within those very confines. And so, you steel yourself to look deeper, to trace the outline of every brick, every crack, every seam. You wonder, what stories have you told yourself so many times they became reality? Which convictions do you dare question first? You know that to escape, you must confront the architects of your own imprisonment, those voices, those beliefs, those certainties that have, paradoxically, become your captors. A distant echo calls you forward, the promise of a burning truth that shatters illusions. Your pulse quickens at the thought. Beyond the walls of this silent chamber lies a revelation, an invitation to step into a realm of uncharted freedom. But first, you must acknowledge the cage. First, you must feel its weight. And in that moment, standing in the stillness, you understand. Liberation begins not by fleeing the prison, but by unlearning its construction. You step away from the mirror, your fingers brushing against the smooth surface of each pane in the glass wall. You realize now that those reflections are not just your own, they're the reverberations of countless minds that came before you, each leaving behind a footprint in the soft soil of your consciousness. But why did you ever allow these impressions to take root so deeply? Why did you trust phantom architects over your own instinctive sense of truth? At the heart of this cage lies something deceptively simple, the belief that thought equals reality. Carl Jung warned that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You built your walls because you never turned the lights on in your own psyche. You absorbed judgments like bricks dropped one by one, never pausing to question their shape or weight. Each criticism spoken or implied settled into the hidden corners of your mind, fermenting until it sprouted into doubling doubts that shadowed every choice. Friedrich Nietzsche beckoned you to become the artist of your own soul, yet you handed your brush to external forces. The shifting morals of your culture, the constant stream of approval and condemnation on social media, the scripts handed down by parents or peers. Nietzsche's proclamation, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow," slipped through your fingers because you accepted a why written by someone else. You never felt the tremor of forging your own purpose, and so every external should became another strand in the web that trapped you. Arthur Schopenhauer insisted that all life is suffering, and you dutifully wove suffering into your identity, as though suffering were a badge of honor rather than a signal of a life out of alignment. Each disappointment, each perceived failure, you elevated to an unassailable truth. You forgot that life's pain can be a guide, not a sentence. By codifying suffering, you fortified your mental bars with invisible steel. Aldous Huxley painted worlds where the mind could be both sanctuary and prison, and you stand now in one such paradox. His vision of a society lulled by pleasure into submission finds its echo in your countless comforts, the endless distraction of screens, the soothing hum of routine which masks the gradual narrowing of your inner horizons. You scavenge tiny joys to numb the ache of confinement, never realizing that these little sadations are mortared between the blocks of your cell. Jean-Paul Sartre raged against bad faith, the lie of living inauthentically. How many moments have you surrendered to the roles people demanded of you? The dutiful child, the competent colleague, the agreeable friend. Each role demanded a script you never wrote, and you memorized those lines so well that you forgot your own voice. Bad faith is not merely it is the active construction of a persona that fortifies the very walls you wish to tear down. Viktor Frankl, who found meaning even in the abyss of Auschwitz, showed that purpose can shine through the darkest nights. Yet you have treated purpose as a distant star, forever out of reach, rather than igniting it within your own heart. You allowed the question, "Why am I here?" to wither into "Why bother?" And in that withering, you watered the ivy of despair that now chokes your will. This hidden force, this relentless compounding of unexamined beliefs, operates in the shadows of your mind. It lurks behind everyday decisions, the foods you choose, the conversations you avoid, the dreams you smother before they can take flight. Cognitive biases, those shortcuts meant to protect you, have become your prison guards. Confirmation bias affirms only the bricks you've already laid. The sunk cost fallacy traps you in half-finished projects because you can't afford to abandon them. The spotlight effect convinces you everyone is watching your every misstep, further cementing your fear of stepping beyond the walls. Understand too that this fortress is not purely self-wrought. It is a reflection of society's own constructs. From childhood, you internalized the stories culture told about success, love, and worth. You inherited scripts about acceptable desires and dangerous ambitions, about fitting in, and the shame of standing out. These social frameworks poured concrete into your foundation, making it seem impossible to dismantle without toppling your entire identity. And yet, hidden within these philosophical debris lies a key. The same psychological principles that assembled these walls can, when brought into consciousness, be directed toward demolition. But first, you must shine a light into the crevices where you've stashed inconvenient truths. You must trace the origin of each conviction, whose voice planted it, what fear nourished it, what moment marked its first appearance. Only by excavating these buried beliefs can you begin to see the structure of your confinement. You feel a tremor of anticipation, because acknowledging the problem is the first act of rebellion. You sense that the path to freedom will demand intellectual rigor and raw honesty, dethroning comfortable illusions and confronting uncomfortable realities. There is no bypass, no quick trick, only the painstaking work of self-exposure. Yet as you stand here, on the precipice of excavation, you catch a glimpse of possibility, that your mind, once freed from its own jailers, could be the most open sky imaginable. As you pry open the mind's hidden latch, a new horror comes into view. The ways this internal prison seeps into every crevice of your life, shaping realities you scarcely recognize. The bars you forged from fear and doubt do more than confine, they subtly direct your steps, whispering suggestions that feel like truths. You begin to sense how deeply this cage permeates your decisions, your relationships, even the fleeting flicker of dreams you once cherished. Consider your daily routine. You choose the same route to work, eat the same foods, scroll the same feeds. Each action seems benign, even comforting, but these rituals are the soft wires of control. Neurologically, your brain craves familiarity. Dopamine rewards reinforce patterns until they harden into habits. Every time you reach for your phone at a moment's hesitation, you're reinforcing the wireframe of your prison. The more you repeat these loops, the wider the bars spread, until your world is nothing more than a narrow corridor of predictability. Cognitive biases, those supposed mental shortcuts, become the architects of your captivity. The anchoring effect fixes your expectations to the first number you hear. So when someone suggests you're almost qualified, or just shy of perfect, you anchor there, never daring to negotiate a higher value for yourself. Loss aversion makes you cling to the known miseries of your past, rather than risk the unknown, tempting exit that might lead to freedom. And the confirmation bias ensures that every stray thought aligning with your fears gets catalogued and magnified, while any evidence of possibility dissolves into the background static of disbelief. But it's not only within you that these forces operate. Cultural conditioning wraps around your mind like a second skin. From the moment you learn to speak, stories about who you should be compliant, successful have been etched into your neural circuitry. Advertisers, politicians, social media algorithms, all tirelessly constructing, reinforcing, and selling narratives that fit neatly within the frame you yourself erect. You don't even realize there are frames exist, because they feel as real as the air you breathe. And yet, these constructs are chosen, adopted, and rarely questioned. Look at your relationships. You know, the echo chamber of friends who nod at your every belief, reinforcing a narrow circle of agreement. You feel safe there, but that safety is a mirage, without dissenting voices. Your worldview, the social proof bias, convinces you these perspectives are universal truths. So you build thicker walls around any contradiction, isolating yourself in a fortress of shared delusion. Intimate conversations become performances. You recite your lines, expecting only applause or gentle correction, never the challenge that might crack open your mind. And what of creativity? The spark of imagination that once turned blank pages into galaxies now struggles for air. Neurologically, your brain's executive functions responsible for novelty and exploration are dulled by stress hormones that spike when you sense threat. Your prison registers every unknown as a danger. When you hesitate to launch that passion project, trembling at the thought of failure, the very fear of failure is a guard tightening its grip. You don't lack talent, you lack permission. Your own mind won't grant. Even your sense of self is a product of these unseen chains. Self-perception biases tune your self-image to the frequency of your accumulated beliefs. If you once whispered, "I am unlovable," that whisper echoes back in every awkward social interaction, convincing you of your hopelessness. You treat your reflection as a document of fact rather than an interpretation. The mind's eye can't see beyond the bars it built. This slow erosion of possibility is perhaps the most insidious consequence. You wake each morning with the sensation of sameness pressing upon you, an invisible hand guiding your eye toward the same small patch of sky. Over time, ambition shrinks, desires dim. You forget what it feels like to yearn for something vast or strange. Instead, you'd settle for the flicker of distraction, a binge, a scroll, a snack. Each temporary solace cements another layer of concrete, until one day you realize that the walls have closed in so tight, you cannot even summon a question that matters. There is an urgency to this realization. Every breath you take within these confines is a breath stolen from your potential. Your passions, your questions, your capacity for wonder, they all atrophy when suffocated by unseen walls. The longer you remain ignorant of these forces, the more entrenched they become, until any attempt to escape feels like tearing out your own heart. Yet in this very moment, the horror holds a gift: awareness. You are now conscious of the biases, the neurochemical loops, the societal scripts that forged your handcuffs. Recognition is the first rupture in the You begin to taste the possibility of space beyond the bars, an expanse where your mind can recalibrate, rewire, resurrect long-buried yearnings. as the hum of your internal prison echoes in your veins. A flicker of determination sparks. You will learn the guards round, understand each bias, each conditioned impulse, each unmet assumption. You will map the blueprints of confinement. Only then can you envision the breach, the sabotage of each mechanical lock. Feel the urgency, the pulse behind your temples. Everything you cherish, your creativity, your relationships, your deepest truths awaits on the far side of these walls. The unseen consequences shift from being silent jailers to beacons guiding your first tentative steps toward freedom. The stage is set. The bars now glimmer, not with the cold promise of despair, but with the raw material of your awakening. Beyond them lies a revelation not yet spoken, a method of rebellion that will shatter the unseen cage. You stand on the threshold. Will you cross it? You step through the threshold you almost missed, the faint crack in the wall of your mind widening beneath your fingertips. And suddenly you are in a different space. Not another prison, but a battlefield strewn with the debris of your former certainties. Here, rebellion begins, not with brute force, but with a radical shift in perspective so profound it unseats the foundations you once thought immovable. First, recognize the paradox at the heart of escape. Freedom is not found by fleeing the prison, but by confronting it. You must turn toward the very thoughts that have terrified you. What feels like weakness, painful memories, self-judgments. The voice in your head crying you're unworthy becomes the greatest source of power once you learn to observe it without attachment. This is the principle of cognitive diffusion from acceptance and commitment therapy. Thoughts are not commands, and you can watch them drift by like clouds without chasing them away or punching them into submission. Each time you catch a fearful thought and let it float past, you reclaim a square inch of mental territory. Consider the Stoics, who thrived amid danger by reframing adversity as apprenticeship in virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." You, too, can turn obstacles into stepping stones. The anxiety that once shackled you can become the ignition for self-inquiry. The next time your chest tightens, ask, what is this fear teaching me? What invitation is hidden in its pang? By engaging rather than evading, you transform a would-be jailer into a reluctant guide. Next, enlist surprise as your ally. Your internal prison craves predictability. Its walls were built one familiar brick at a time. To dismantle them, introduce unpredictability. Try something utterly different this week. Take a new route to work, learn a snippet of an unfamiliar language, or strike up a conversation with a stranger. Each act of novelty sends neural shockwaves through your habitual pathways, rewiring your brain to expect the unknown. Over time, your mind begins to crave disorientation as much as it used to crave routine. Look to history for blueprints of this rebel mindset. Socrates, sentenced to death for questioning the accepted truths of Athens, embraced his final hours as the greatest lesson he could ever teach. That unexamined life is not worth living. He drank the hemlock with composure, transforming the ultimate sentence into an act of philosophical liberation. You need not face martyrdom to harness his courage. You need only dare to question one deeply held belief you never examined. What if your most sacred conviction is debris from someone else's mind? What if letting it fall away reveals a vista of possibilities? Then, harness the power of micro-rebellions. Big revolutions are composed of tiny acts of defiance stacked one atop another. Each morning, pick one rule your internal critic enforces without justification. Perhaps you must finish every task perfectly, or you can't rest until you're productive. Then break it deliberately. Allow yourself to stop halfway, to make a mistake, to rest when you feel empty. Notice the tremor of resistance that rises and breathe into it rather than turning back. Every micro-rebellion loosens the rivets holding your cage. Reimagine failure as feedback. Viktor Frankl found meaning amid Auschwitz by reframing his suffering as an opportunity to choose his attitude. Similarly, view each misstep not as proof of your inadequacy, but as a message pointing to an untested hypothesis. If you attempted something and it didn't work, ask, what assumption did I make? What can I learn? This scientific curiosity about your own life transforms failure from a barrier into a tool for excavation. Cultivate a sacred why. Nietzsche's insight that a compelling purpose can carry you through any suffering demands a why so fierce it burns away competing voices. Your why need not be grandiose. It can be as intimate as I exist, to bring joy to my solitude, or as sweeping as I will leave this world more curious than I found it. Write it in your own hand, post it where you see it each morning, and let its gravity realign your decisions. When choices arise, ask, which path honors this? Why? Invite accountability and opposition. In 1968, civil rights activists formed freedom schools, where students were encouraged to question authority and confront injustice head-on. These safe spaces of dissent fostered critical thinking and collective courage. You too need a freedom school, a friend or mentor willing to challenge your assumptions, to ask, have you considered this? And to refuse easy reassurance. Seek out those who will confront you with kindness, who will act as the Socratic gadfly to your complacency. Finally, enact the ritual of mental just as Marie Kondo teaches to discard possessions that no longer spark joy, you must clear away mental relics that no longer serve you. Hold each recurring worry, belief, or story in your mind's hand. Ask, does this spark my vitality, or does it anchor me to suffering? If it drags you down, set it free. Over time, you'll notice an internal lightness, spaces of silence where old convictions once whispered. Through these radical shifts, observing thoughts without judgment, reframing obstacles, embracing novelty, performing micro-rebellions, redefining failure, clarifying purpose, courting dissent, and decluttering your psyche, become the architect of your own emancipation. You replace the mortar of fear with the scaffolding of curiosity, the bricks of doubt with beams of the internal prison begins to crumble, revealing open sky. This rebellion is not a destination, but a continuous practice. Each day, each moment, a choice to stand at the breach and step forward. As you do, you'll feel the walls give way, stone by stone. And when at last the final barrier falls, you'll discover not a vast emptiness, but a boundless landscape of thought, feeling, and possibility. Your mind, finally whole and free. You step through the rubble of your dismantled cage, blinking as the pale light of a vast interior dawns before you. At first, the space feels empty, an abyss of possibility too immense to grasp. Your chest presses with the weight of approaching revelation, as though your soul's silhouette is drawn against a blank canvas. You sense that everything you thought you knew was merely a shadow play on those prison walls. Now, the ultimate truth waits to be revealed, that your mind's limits were never fixed by circumstance, society, or biology, but by the stories you chose to live. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a chasm that stretches wider than any canyon, its depths shimmering with raw, unformed potential. In your hand, you hold a single key, a thought so simple that it trembles on the edge of understanding. You are the author of reality, not its victim. Every perception, every belief, every moment of suffering or ecstasy is a brushstroke applied by your own hand. The world does not happen to you, it unfolds through you. This is no trivial epiphany, but a paradigm shift of cosmic proportions. Recall Viktor Frankl's discovery that between stimulus and response lies a space where freedom resides. You have inhabited that space, believing it occupied by fear. Now you see it is your domain of creation. The most powerful realization is that thought does not merely describe reality, it shapes. Your mind is a forge, and every belief a hammer blow on the molten world around you. Imagine the waves against the shoreline, each crest and trough sculpted not only by tides and moon, but by the very impulse of water seeking expression. Likewise, your intentions, unchained, ripple outward, transforming the world in ways both unseen and undeniable. The boundaries between inner world and outer world dissolve. You recognize that your perception is not a window but the very fabric of existence. The Baroque tapestry of life is woven by the warp of your consciousness and the weft of your attention. But with this liberation comes responsibility as vast as the sky. If every thought carries the power to create or destroy, then what will you choose to bring into being? This is the final crossroads. Will you paint your life in the muted tones of fear or the blazing colors of possibility? The ancient mantra is, if your inner landscape blooms with generosity, courage, love, and curiosity, then the world will mirror that abundance. If it remains haunted by suspicion, limitation, and despair, then those reflections will solidify like shadows at dusk. Second, you must embrace the alchemy of paradox. True power emerges when you relinquish the need for control. Paradoxically, the more you allow life to unfold through you with trust, humility, and gratitude, the more potent your creative force becomes. This is the lesson of the Taoists. Water yields and overcomes. Emptiness contains the fullness of potential. By releasing the last vestiges of "I must force my destiny," you align with the greater currents of life, transforming from a solitary prisoner to a participant in a grand symphony of becoming. Now feel the resonance of interconnectedness humming in your veins. As you awaken to your own sovereignty, you see that every mind is a prism refracting the same light, unique, yet of a single source. Your liberation cracks open tunnels through which others may glimpse freedom. Each act of authenticity sends reverberations across the human web. You are no longer isolated. You stand in a vast gallery of souls, each creating beauty from the formless void. The final truth is not just in your awakening, but in the recognition that your awakening stirs the world as awakening. In this moment, you realize that freedom is not an endpoint but an ever-expanding horizon. The walls you dismantled were never the end of your journey, they were the prologue. Beyond them lies the adventure of constant recreation, of forging new stories that honor the depths of your being. The world awaits the imprint of your vision, a life sculpted from the marriage of intention and openness, of purpose and play, of discipline and surrender. As the last light of understanding floods your awareness, you see your reflection once more, but not in a mirror this time, but in the luminous sky above. You are both artist and artwork, dreamer and dream, subject and canvas. The final revelation settles in your bones. You are infinite in your capacity to imagine, to transform, to love. In the hushed silence that follows, you whisper to yourself, "I am the architect of my own reality. I am the voice that shapes the void. I am the light that dissolves the darkness." And as you speak these words, the abyss behind you murmurs its ascent. The horizon stretches wide and beckons. With steady breath, you step forward into the boundless, carrying nothing but the key of your own making, and as your foot touches that luminous soil, the very earth trembles with possibility. There are no walls here, only sky.